Okay, welcome everybody. I'm getting the start signal from our AGP folks. Okay, folks, we're going to get started. If everybody can please be seated, we'll get started with our meeting. Welcome, everybody. Today is Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. This is our regular City Council meeting of the City of Morro Bay. We're located at the Veterans Memorial Hall, and our meeting is starting at 6 p.m. as always. For the record, we do have all council members present. There's a quorum, and we'll call the meeting to order. And with that, in memory of those lives lost on September 11th, 2001, if we please take a moment of silence. Thank you. Folks, today, as we get started here, we're going to start off with our Pledge of Allegiance, and we're privileged to have two of our firefighters here with us today, Sam Watson and Mike Kelly, and they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Sam, Mike, if you guys will come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be fantastic.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chief Knuckles, you want to introduce them officially for us, please? Thanks.
Mr. Mayor and Council, and I want to introduce you to two firefighters who received their badges today. One is a brand new hire, and that's Sam Watson. He's right here. He's our new firefighter paramedic. Sam is a local graduate from our high school, and he's grown up in the area. He went to the academy up down in Lompoc. He did his paramedic school locally, but did his internship in Fresno and our county, and he did his clinical time down in Santa Maria Marian Hospital. I'm real proud of Sam. Sam has been with us for 5 years as a reserve, and it was a 45-day testing process that we had, and Sam did really well in the process, and I'm real happy to have him. On my left is Michael Kelly. He's been with us for a while. He was a firefighter, not a paramedic. He just finished paramedic school, so now he's an engineer paramedic for us. And he is a local also. He went to Coast Union. He just told me today that he was an all-state wide receiver, 22 touchdowns in one season.
Wow.
But he's a local. He served time in the Air Force. He has his general contractor's license, and he came with us 5 years ago. We hired him as a firefighter. He had to go to paramedic school on his own. He did his paramedic school locally. He did his internship in the 5 cities area, and he did his clinical time at Sierra Vista Hospital. So I'm real glad also to give Mike Kelly his engineer badge today. So congratulations, Mike.
Congratulations, you guys.
And thank you so much.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks for coming out, and congratulations on today. Thank you. So, folks, I know a lot of us are here for our public hearing item today, so I just wanted to talk through the structure of the meeting and then ask council for some consideration on how we go through it. So looking for council consensus on, since we'd like to get to our public hearing item first, so I was going to ask with council consensus that we open up public comment period shortly after our announcements and presentations, and we open up public comment for 30 minutes. We allow folks that want to speak to items later on in the agenda, items C1 and C2, to come up and speak to that. We'll close public comment, which will be the general public comment period that's not on the for items not on the agenda, and then we'll go right into our public hearing items. So for those people that are waiting, public hearing, we're going to get right to that, and then following our public hearing item, if there's any other requests for public comment for items not on the agenda, we can entertain that at that time, and then we'll move into our normal business items. So that's what I would like to have consensus from council, if that seems good with you. Okay, thank you. And do we need an affirmative vote on that?
No, but you were going to have the consent before the public hearing?
And we were going to have, as part of the general public comment, when we open for 30 minutes, we'll take the consent, anybody speaking to consent as well.
And you're going to have the consent agenda before the public hearing?
Yes. Okay. And so with that, we'll move on, and we'll get into council members' reports and announcements, and I'll look to my left. Red?
Thank you. Tonight I want to recognize one of our special Morro-Bay citizens, Judy Salamanca, for the many ways that she helps and supports our community. I think that all of us read her newspaper pieces that highlight special community events and people. Judy's also on the board of directors for the Maritime Museum, and she has worked hard to raise money and get the first stage of that museum built. Judy was on the Morro-Bay 50th Committee. She ran the Central Coast Writers Conference for many years. And this coming weekend, she is coordinating the SLO County Human Trafficking Summit here at the Morro-Bay Community Center, and that is sold out. She has done a great job promoting that event. These are just a few of the ways that Judy supports and builds our community, and I just want to say thank you to Judy tonight.
Thanks, Red. Matt? John? Marlis?
Yes, I just have one announcement. I made it at the last meeting, but I'm going to make it again, and that is the Morro-Bay Open Space Alliance is holding its second annual block party, community party, on the 22nd of September from 2 to 5, and that's at Cerrito Place, which is right at the base of Cerrito Peak, and there's going to be fun for the entire family. There'll be booths, there'll be food, this year there's going to be a beer and wine garden, and it's free, except they would like donations for the food and refreshments. But please come out and see it. It's a beautiful place, and you can see why the Morro-Bay Open Space Alliance is trying to save it and pay the city back, because the city bought it when a developer was going to take it up. And so we want to support that effort. Thanks.
All right, Marlis, thank you. Next up, city manager reports. Scott, none tonight? Okay, great. And closed session report, I skipped over that, but there are no reportable actions. Thank you. And presentations, we have 2 presentations tonight. First up is our rideshare week folks here. Okay, if we can do that first, and then we'll go through our proclamation, and then we'll have council come up. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Irons and Morro-Bay City Council members. I am here to promote Rideshare Week, which is the first week of October, always. It's a week to let people know that there are other transportation options. Instead of just driving your car alone, you can bike, walk, bus, carpool, or vanpool. And we offer lots of different incentives if you are going to try biking, walking, bus, carpool, or vanpool. So there's 7 different ways to win $100, or if you try to do all 7, then you can win $700. And you can pledge to do these things on supercommuter.org. There's different events being held throughout the county to get people to pledge, and they happen at quite a few job sites throughout our county. There was already one at AG Hospital and the Atascadero State Hospital job fair. That's coming up tomorrow and the next day, and Saturday. And then there will be at the Cal Poly New Hire Fair on September 17th. There's one at Sierra Vista, another one at the Tascadero State Hospital, one at the CMC, one at the Cal Poly IT department. And then on Saturday the 28th, there will be a kickoff in downtown SLO. The following week, during Rideshare Week, you can still pledge to make your smart commute choice, which is, again, biking, walking, bus, riding the bus, carpooling, or vanpooling. And those events are listed on the screen there. And if you're looking to try something new, like riding the bus, I was talking to Janine earlier today, and she let me know that on Thursday, that'll be October 4th, you can ride Morro Bay Transit for free. So if you've never tried it before, that's a great day to try it because it's free. Other than that, you can, if you're in SLO during that week, SLO Transit is free all week, and you can... There's $100 off the first month and free upgrade from if you're using a van pool to get to work or if you want to start a van pool. And if you've never tried an e-bike, that's a great opportunity to try one as well, because you can get a free 2-week e-bike trial from Boltabout, which is a Cal Poly startup, if you haven't heard of it. Rideshare Week also has, if you log your trips on our website, you can win what's called a Vehicle Miles Traveled, or VMT challenge, which is what you want to reduce during Rideshare Week, is your vehicle miles traveled. And you can win what's called a Bike to Work Day, a Best Workplaces for Commuters award, which is just something for bragging rights, really. The following week is Walk to School Day, and that's about it. You can walk to school. You can walk to school any day, but yeah. And so the first week of October is Rideshare Week. Thank you, guys.
Can you introduce yourself and who you're with?
Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry. I was told I should be as quick as possible.
Sorry.
I am now Sarah Woolsey. I got married. I'm from the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments, and Rideshare is a portion of the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, we just wanted to hear that you announced that you got married. That's the thing I wanted to hear.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor Irons.
Sarah, thanks very much for coming out. Next up on the presentations, we have a proclamation declaring Peace and Nonviolence Month, and I was going to invite Ruth Ann Angus up to the podium, and I was going to ask if council would go down as well while we read the proclamation.
And I would like to ask all of my people to please join us at the podium. You are my people. I think we're going to go this way. Okay. So we're going to be filmed, yes. Well, he's moving, but... Oh, no, now he's moving. This is just like old...
Okay.
It's like organizing, I don't know what.
All right, welcome everybody. It's a privilege to be able to read and present this proclamation, and Ruth Ann, you'll have a few words for us to describe a little bit more about what's going on with this. And I'll read the proclamation, and it tells a story, and we hope that we see more of this in the future. This is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay designating September 21st of each year to be the City of Morro Bay Day of Peace and the month of September as the City of Morro Bay Peace and Nonviolence Month. Whereas peace is not merely the absence of war and violence, but a condition where a society has achieved a balance of prosperity, security, justice, and hope, and peace is achieved through the following concepts and methodology of nonviolence. And whereas, for peace and nonviolence to prevail, the City of Morro Bay will endeavor to foster a culture of peace through education and sustainable economic and social development as a necessity for peace to prevail. And whereas the City of Morro Bay desires to promote and respect all human rights, advance understanding, tolerance, and solidarity, solidarity, support participatory communication, and the free flow of information and knowledge. And whereas the City of Morro Bay is committed to establishing peace and nonviolence in the region to promote understanding, economic opportunity, and improve the quality of life of the people of our region. And this vision builds on the expertise of each person and involves all segments of our city in planning actions and making a difference. And whereas the City of Morro Bay will work together to create and implement initiatives that not only foster peace and nonviolence, but create a positive and lasting change in our community, seeking to become a model for other communities. And whereas these statements of the City of Morro Bay rejects war, poverty, injustice, and environmental degradation. And whereas each year the International Day of Peace is observed around the world on September 21st, and the General Assembly of the United Nations has declared this as a day devoted to strengthening the ideals of peace, both within and among all nations of people. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Jamie Irons, and the City of Morro Bay Council and the City of Morro Bay designate September 21st of each year to be the City of Morro Bay Day of Peace and the month of September as the City of Morro Bay Peace and Nonviolence Month. Congratulations. All right, just want to... So, Ruthann, this is the official proclamation. And if you want to say
How about
a few
that?
words.
Yes, I will say something. Well, as you know, I'm Ruth Ann Angus, and I'm the director of something called Yes We Can Peace Builders, which is associated with Pache Ibeni Campaign Nonviolence, which is a national organization. I'm very pleased to bring this proclamation to the citizens of Morro Bay. In establishing the month of September as the City of Morro Bay Peace and Nonviolence Month, and September 21st as the City of Morro Bay Day of Peace, from now on, we enter a new and exciting time. Morro Bay joins with more than 50 other cities in the nation working on the Campaign Nonviolent Cities Project. That tackles all aspects of violence. Violence is not only physical or psychological, but also occurs through justification of violence, through nationalism, racism, sexism, and other forms of discrimination, as well as social, political, and economic injustice. Nonviolence asks for the cessation of the us versus them way of thinking, and encourages dialogue and understanding for all to reach common ground. In 2013, Campaign Nonviolence instituted Peace Week surrounding the United Nations International Day of Peace. And this year that occurs from September 15th through September 23rd. This year, more than 2,600 separate peace events will be taking place throughout the nation, and there are several taking place locally. I really like to thank the members of my committee, my Rotary Club, my Engage Now study group, and the mayor, Mayor Jamie, and all of the council for all the invaluable assistance that I received bringing about this proclamation. Thanks to all of you so very much. I could not have done this alone, and this is not the end. This is not the summation of something, but it is the beginning. Thank you so much. Can we get one picture standing over here?
You want to get one more picture?
One, yeah, just with him.
As we're moving on, okay, next up, as we get into public comment, I'm just going through our public comment speaker slips, and I didn't receive any. I only have 2 speaker slips for items later on in the agenda. I have 2 consent speaker slips. I don't have any speaker slips for any of the C1 or C2 business items for those who wanted to speak to those before, because if you don't want to speak it at this point, we'll wait through all the other business items and speak on that later. We'll open it up. Okay. Okay. All right. We'll open up public comment. We'll start off with our consent items, and then we'll start this up, and we'll end in 30 minutes. And then we'll... did we need to take any kind of affirmative consensus on the 2-minute versus 3, Joe? Do you want to?
It would be best to do that.
Okay. So did you want to just adjust that to 2, and then we'll set the public comment period for 2 minutes, and then, okay, so with consensus of council, just an affirmative support on that for 2 minutes? Okay. All right, so we'll set the timer for 2 minutes on public comment, and we'll go through the speaker slips for public comment for items not on the agenda, and then we'll conclude in 30 minutes, and then we'll go into our public hearing item. First up is Lori Noble for item A5.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Lori Noble. I live in Morro Bay, and I am speaking to item A5, Proposition 6, to repeal the gas and vehicle tax. I oppose your action on this item. This is a citizens' initiative that is on the November ballot. A yes vote will repeal the gas and vehicle tax. 5 elected officials should not speak for the citizens of Morro Bay on this matter. Let the voters be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Sandy Taylor.
My name is Sandy Tandler, and I live in Morro Bay. Today I'm here as a board member of the Central Coast Taxpayers Association. We represent the forgotten taxpayer. I'm proud to say that we are a coalition of 13 businesses and clubs, along with Carl DeMaio, who have gotten yes on 6 on the ballot for November 6th. We heard the anger from the citizens who were tired of being taxed yet again on more gas and car taxes this last January. We heard people say, enough. So we got signatures and made it happen. Now we need everyone to vote yes on 6 so we can send a message to Sacramento, no mas. Right now, today, the Joint Legislative Budget Committee got together in a private room in Sacramento at 10 a.m. to hold an informational hearing that could trigger a hike in water rates and property taxes without even a vote. The proposed water fix, now estimated to cost over $19 billion, is a plan to construct giant tunnels under the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. First, the bullet train we will never use, and now the tunnels that will send water to Southern California. For years, the Sacramento politicians have been raiding the existing gas fund tax to pay for their pet projects and general fund spending rather than actually fixing our terrible roads and infrastructure. By voting yes on 6, you send a message to Sacramento politicians. The Californians want raids of our existing gas tax funds stopped immediately. State Senator John Morlock, a CPA, released a stunning report showing that only 20% of existing gas tax goes to roads and Caltrans waste. $500 million annually on extra staffing.
Sandy, your time's concluded.
I got that.
Thank you.
Vote yes on 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dr. Bob Swain, and then Valerie Levelette.
Robert Swain, member resident of Morro Bay, Iron staff, council, and fellow residents. I just want to run down a couple things. I'm going to take you back in history to 1953. That's when we built our first sewer. And the intelligent members of the community, then we weren't city, they decided that to enhance the lifestyle, they would build a sewer. Well, what if all these people all of a sudden said, no, we don't need a sewer. We like our community the way it is. We probably wouldn't be here today living in Morro Bay. Let's jump up to 1964. Same thing. Our intelligent people in the area said, let's make it a city so we can enhance our lifestyles. We can control our own finances if we're a city. Some of the people probably said no, but if we did all say no, we wouldn't be here a city today. Same thing we are today. Here we are at 2018, a new crossroad in the city. We need to build a sewer. They already said our plant cannot meet the requirements. The Coastal Commission said we can't keep where it is. We need to come together as a city and get something going. I like to go up and say, hey, I'm from Morro Bay, and have people be proud. You know, say, oh, you're in Morro Bay, that's cool. I don't want to say, oh, you live in that town that doesn't want a sewer. And what about our home prices? They're going to go down if we don't have a sewer. And our kids, they don't want to have a house to live in. So I want us to come together as a city, as a community, and let's get this process going. Let's make this a proud place to live. I went so fast, I still got some minutes to talk. But anyway, I think we should get together and really get rid of our egos and come together as a community. And all the past civilizations have all come to demise over me, and not we. We need to do what's good for we, not what's good for me. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Bob. Valerie Levelette, and then Erica Crawford.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Valerie Levelette, a resident of Morro Bay since 1991 and a retired civil servant. I'm here tonight to support the Council's proposed water reclamation facility and to thank Council for their hard work and dedication to this project. I wish I could say there is an easy answer, an easy fix, but life and decision-making are rarely easy. I wish I could say that the new project will please everyone. It won't. The project will, however, provide water security as we face an uncertain future with regard to climate change, our aging infrastructure, and increased competition for low-interest financing and grant opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Erica Crawford. Folks, and when you come up, if you can make sure the microphone's down in front so we and the audience can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, City staff. My name is Erica Crawford. I'm with the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce. I just first have a couple of dates for the business community and the community at large to calendar. The first is tomorrow morning. We have a downtown focus group on economic center branding and wayfinding. That's at 8:30 a.m. at D'Estasio's. That's part of our 4MB Economic Development Project. Tomorrow evening, we're doing a chamber mixer at the Morro Bay Eagles featuring the National Estuary Program, and that's from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And then on Monday, September the 24th, the Morro Bay Mayoral and City Council Candidate Forum, where all candidates are confirmed to participate. This will be moderated by the League of Women Voters. The time is 6 to 8 p.m. It will be live broadcast and streamed on Channel 20, and it takes place at the Community Center. Finally, I just want to say a few words, share some information about last weekend. I've placed some key data points for the community on the Avocado Margarita Street Festival, which took place this past Saturday without incident during the festival hours from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Chamber recognizes that this event is a large event, and we sincerely thank the community for its support. There were a lot of locals there, and its patience with us as we raise money for 5 different Morro Bay-based nonprofit groups during this one-day event while celebrating the world-renowned Morro Bay avocado. The festival set out to accomplish a complete shift in image about 3 years ago. This year, I am proud to report that we began to see that shift come to life. We offered far more avocado dishes, we handed out menus at the gate, and have a huge Grom zone with family-friendly activities. This is more than in years past. Some key points up on the infographic. We've held 3 pre-event business impact meetings with local businesses on the Embarcadero, 15 committee meetings from January to September. We implemented some Embarcadero employee assistance for access to work for that day, trolley passes. We built 3 public right-of-ways in 3 blocks of our footprint. And we put up 2,500 feet of ABC-compliant fencing that was aesthetically pleasing this year. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. Aaron Hawk or Aaron Hank? I'm sorry if I can't read that properly. Hanky, thank you. And then Don Addis.
Mayor Irons and council members, thank you for your time. My name is Aaron Hankey. I'm here as a representative for No on Measure G, as well as a San Luis Obispo County resident. Measure G will be on the ballot this November, and if passed, will result in a complete shutdown of our local oil and gas industry within 2 to 3 years. This will result in the loss of over 200 jobs, as well as millions that are currently going to public safety, local schools, as well as our vital services. Thank you for your time, and for this reason, I urge your board to vote or to support no on Measure G. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Addis, and then Charles Varney.
Hi, I'm Dawn Addis, candidate for City Council. And I have a couple things to mention. One is thank you for your work getting this far on the WRF project. The other is thank you for your proclamation for the day and the month of peace. I also want to speak to A5 and say please do oppose Prop 6 so that we can have money in our county to pay for much needed road repairs. I'd like to speak to C1 and say please keep moving forward with the Community Choice Energy Program. And then I would also like to ask that you endorse Measure G. I have endorsed Measure G already to ban fracking in SLO County, and so I hope that the City Council will consider doing so as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles Varney. And then Maya Allman. Hopefully I've got that right. Maya.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff and residents of Morro Bay. My name is Charles Varney. I live in Oceano, and I am here with the Coalition to Protect San Luis Obispo County, who, with 20,473 other registered voters in San Luis Obispo, qualified Measure G for the ballot. Measure G is bottom line about protecting the quantity and quality of our groundwater, which is ever more precious to us with drought being the new normal. We are concerned about the proposed and planned expansion of oil extraction in the county. Just recently, President Trump proposed that San Luis Obispo County be opened up for fracking, including federal lands in Montaña de Oro, around Whale Rock Reservoir, in the Irish Hills, close to San Luis Obispo, Lopez Lake, Santa Margarita Lake, and most surprisingly, Morro Rock. I don't think that there'll be a derrick out there, but that's part of what's in the mix. So what we are going to every city council in the county. You are last but certainly not least, and we are asking you to agendize Measure G for a council discussion and for you to take a position. We have given you a draft resolution, and we hope that you will do that to broaden the discussion of this important initiative in the county. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Maya Allman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Maya Allman, and I am a senior at Cal Poly. I'm currently majoring in environmental management and minoring in economics. I stand before you today asking you to place Measure G on the consent agenda and adopt a resolution in support of the measure. Despite the arguments of our opponents, Measure G will protect our local economy. Annually, our agricultural economy provides more than 20,000 jobs and adds almost $2 billion into the county's economy. Local farmers rely solely on groundwater for crop growing. In neighboring Kern County, some farmers' groundwater wells have been rendered useless due to oil field wastewater contamination. Tourism, which relies on a safe and reliable water supply, adds another $2 billion and another 20,000 jobs to our economy. Expanded oil extraction is a very real threat to our groundwater quantity and quality. Any oil company with mineral rights under farmland is free to drill when it obtains a permit. Just east of Arroyo Grande, farmers and ranchers in Wasna Valley have spent several years legally fighting oil extractions in the neighborhoods. Council, I encourage you to take a moment to think about the intersection of economic interests at stake and the long-term management of our environment and natural resources. By placing Measure G on the consent agenda or endorsing the measure individually, we can protect current jobs and take a practical and sustainable approach to the management of our resources. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dominique Dashwood, and then Pat Mungoin.
Good evening, Mayor Irons and the Council of Morro Bay. My name is Dominique Dashwood. I am also a senior at Cal Poly studying environmental management and protection. I stand before you today asking you to place Measure G on the consent agenda and eventually adopt a resolution in support of the measure. Measure G will ban fracking and prohibit the expansion of current oil fields in San Luis Obispo County. One myth you may hear about Measure G is that Measure G will result in the loss of hundreds of jobs. The truth is that all existing oil extraction operations and maintenance are protected, so there is no threat to the 74 full-time oil industry jobs in the county. County agriculture and tourism generate $4 billion of value and employ 40,000 people. The oil industry pays less than 1/2 of the 1% of the county's property and unitary taxes. Healthy and plentiful local groundwater is essential for our economy. Council, I urge you to place Measure G on the consent agenda and to protect our current jobs and pristine natural environment in San Luis Obispo County. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat Mungoin. Mangoin? You can correct me on that. Thanks.
It's Pat Mangione.
Mangione, thank you.
I'm also here in support of Measure G. Pat Mangione, I live in Morro Bay. I'm a member of the Citizens Climate Lobby in San Luis Obispo and the Sierra Club. But as far as greenhouse gases go, according to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, atmospheric CO2 levels are now at 410 parts per million, the highest levels in 15 million years. A large percentage of these gases come from fossil fuels used by humans and are the primary cause of global climate change. The crude oil coming out of SLO County is one of the dirtiest on Earth. It has extremely high concentrations of carbon gases and an assortment of toxic chemicals. In addition to this disadvantage, the extraction process is highly polluting and energy intensive. The underground steam injection uses huge amounts of fossil fuels, and the process emits tens of thousands of tons of greenhouse gases. Given the scientific fact of greenhouse gases driving global climate change, this crude oil should be left in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff Heller, and then Steve Francis.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Heller. I'm running for City Council. I would like to say tonight that I am so appreciative and thankful to have been involved with so many citizens here in Morro Bay who were part of the organization that I've been involved with, known as Citizens for Affordable Living. I can't tell you how excited I was when people showed up to our meetings week after week to exercise their constitutional right in our little town to oppose increases in water and waste rates. I would like it if the city would issue a proclamation thanking our organization for bringing different opinions to the city and exercising our constitutional rights to disagree. There's a lot of talk about agreeing to disagree, but frankly, we don't feel like that has been exercised with respect to our group. I personally would like to bury the hatchet because what is in front of us now in terms of financial issues and other things that need to be resolved will require us to work together. I will pledge to that. And I hope the city will issue a proclamation in appreciation of the thousands of hours of citizens for affordable living have put in who just disagree with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Francis.
Steve Francis. I live in Morro Bay. I'd like to thank city staff, city council, and the various appointed volunteer boards who have spent hours and lots of effort developing the project plans for our water reclamation facility. I fully support the WRF plan as proposed. We've had years of under-supporting our city infrastructure, and with this new facility, we're finally investing in the future of Morro Bay for us and our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, John Weiss.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, staff, and friends in Morro Bay. My name is John Weiss. I'm running for mayor to bring my 40 years of Morro Bay business experience, 4 years as the president of the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce, and recently as Rotary District Governor. I have concerns for the pathway our city is going on. My vision is to honor the character of our town and help create a better everyday life for the people of this community. I see and understand that many changes and challenges our community is facing and will continue to face in the future. Our quaint and picturesque fishing village has unique character anchored by majestic Morro rock, natural coastal beauty, and abundant wildlife. But for me, the best part of our charming coastal town is its amazing people, whose heart and soul represent the fabric of our community. If elected your mayor, I will keep my word to support affordable solutions for all people. I will lead by example, and remember, it's never too late to do the right thing.
Carol Swain. And then Richard Sadowski.
My name is Carol Swain. I live in Morro Bay. We have been awaiting this milestone for a long time. I have heard from both sides that, no matter what the outcome, we would like to move on together. Please continue leading us through this process as skillfully and as professionally as you have so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Sadowski. And then Marla Jo Sadowski.
Richard Sadowski, sit on the Morro Bay Planning Commission. I also sat on the Water Reclamation Facility Advisory Committee, and now I guess it's an action committee, whatever. I want to talk about the future and what you are going to be remembered by. I had a friend of mine get a call. A good dear friend of hers from 30 years ago was suicidal. She's suicidal because she rents. They're going to jack up her rent. I have another friend of mine who lives in a trailer park, has had to move. She was a single mom that made Morro Bay her home years ago. That's what you guys are tearing apart with this ridiculous project. I talked to all of you. I was a first responder for collection system emergencies. I worked with Bruce Keel hand in hand when I worked in Cayucas. You have a lift station that fails, you have 440 volts arcing, you have a diesel generator that fails, you're going to put a pump in, you have to bypass the pumps, you're on a time frame, sewage is coming up, and then where do you pump it? You pump it to the lowest spot in the city, and that's the treatment plant, so it can get pumped out. With this project that you have, you're putting a lift station in, you're better off putting a hose out into the ocean than pumping it inland and then having it dump in the back bay. I mentioned this issue about greenhouse gas the goal that California has, and now with passing of SB 100, it's even higher. How are you going to mitigate the greenhouse gases from the energy using pumping there and back? And you know what Black and Veatch said? We're not there yet. That was 3.5 years ago. They're still not there. Trump, he's never going to be there. But California is. You guys are an embarrassment. That's what you're doing. You're gentrifying this community.
Thanks, Richard. Marla Jo Sadowski.
Hi, Marla Jo Sadowski, North Morro Bay. Before we take the votes tonight in the next public hearing that you're going to have, I would like to publicly state for the record that I believe that I and this whole community has been threatened by the Regional Water Quality Control Board with the help of the City of Morro Bay. At the 425-18 WARF special meeting that you had where you disallowed public comment, which is against the law, you also arranged for the Harvey Packard, the Chief Enforcement Officer at the Regional Board, to sit on the WARF panel. In his comments, when he was asked of what would trigger fines and penalties and even CDOs, cease and desist orders, Mr. Packard said that he believed that the board would be very interested in assessing fees on the broader meaning of the word of the city. What he was saying is to individuals and groups in this city if this Prop 218 vote doesn't pass. That was a direct threat to this community, and I believe it's influenced members in this community who heard it or have heard about it. So I believe that this is a tainted election, and that the City of Morro Bay is part of that coercion and threat that happened in our community. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the amount of money of penalties. There's also been a major flaw with the city in trying to convince people that the Coastal Commission has forbidden a plant west of Highway 1. It's not true, and you know it.
Next up, Judy Brown. And then Teddy Levitt.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and neighbors. Hi. I'm here tonight because I have a happy event to announce. September 16th, we will have our very first Nextdoor.com community potluck. And it will be Sunday at Del Mar Park. It'll be the upper part of the park. And this is for greeting your fellow neighbors and Nextdoor board contributors. You don't have to be a member of Nextdoor, or if you have been a member of Nextdoor, or you want to be a member of Nextdoor, it's pretty much an invite for the whole town. And this is a nonpartisan, politics-free, agenda-free activity, and this is a chance for us all just to let our hair down, enjoy our beautiful environment together. It sounds like there's going to be craft tables, and I'm encouraging everyone to bring instruments. If you want to bang a drum or play a guitar or whatever you wish to do, raise your voice in song would be a good one. So this is a potluck, and I am asking that everybody bring their own tableware and table settings so that we don't have to have a lot of garbage generated from this. So that is Sunday, September 16th, 1 to 4 p.m. at Upper Del Mar Park. Everybody's invited, and I hope to see you all there. Let's have some fun for a change. Thank you.
Thanks, Teddy Levitt.
Good evening, Mayor Irons, Council, and good evening to everybody here. I'm not a very political person, so I wonder why I'm standing here in front of you. but I really do know why. I do believe that people who volunteer for a council job that will get lots of what you've gotten is complaining, rude comments, and not as much support as one would have liked to have seen. I do feel supportive of you and your efforts, and I thank you for them. I'm here to say that I support the Water Reclamation Facility project, and I hope we go forward with that. I also would like to see a continuation of efforts for the, what did I write down? CCE, Community Choice Energy. I'm very much in favor of that. Thank you again.
Thank you. Betty Winholtz. And then Donna Stoll.
Thank you. My name is Betty Winholtz, and I'm speaking to you this evening as a member of Morro Bay Beautiful. I, along with Melody Demerit, do the highway cleanup for 2 miles between Main Street and South Bay Boulevard. We do that about once a month. I would like to announce that Morro Bay Beautiful is always open for membership, and if people are interested in becoming members, you can go to morrobaybeautiful.org, and you'll find an app on there that you can download and become a member of. The board of Morro Bay Beautiful would like to thank Mr. Red Davis for his generous donation lately. We appreciate that support. And what we do for fundraising, one of the things we do, and Lori's going to put them up there for me, is we sell license plate holders. And this has been going on since the 1990s, Morro Bay Beautiful. And you get 2 for $22, one for the front, one for the back of your car. Or if you want to buy one for your car and for another car, these are available at Henson Tires over on Quintana Street. We have developed a new one lately. If Lori would change the photo, you'll see one that now says, "You oughter be in Morro Bay," picking up on our famous resident down at the Rock. Again, these are also available at Henson's Tires, and they're the same price, $22 for a set of 2, or you can buy one solo. And then if Lori will put that up, she'll show you that you can find these plates. You have choice then, Morro Bay Beautiful, or You Oughter Be in Morro Bay. And the last page, Lori, shows the 3 locations where you can pick these up. At Henson's Tires, Junk Love on the Embarcadero, and Morro Bay Aquarium, which is now have a new address, not where they used to be at 601 the Embarcadero. Thank you for your support of Morro Bay Beautiful.
Thanks. Up next, Donna Stoll. We're right on 30 minutes, and we have 2 speaker slips left, and we'll close public comment. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you, Mayor Irons. My name is Donna Stoll, and I live in Nomo, which is a cool way to say North Morro Bay. I'm here to say thank you for all your work. I know how difficult this process has been, but thank you very much, Council and Mayor, for all the countless, thankless hours you put in to come up with this great plan, and we have to support this now. It's the only thing. And tonight I'm saying yes for 2 things. Yes for the new water reclamation facility, and yes to support Measure G. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Cynthia Hawley. And then David Nelson. That'll conclude public comment.
I'm Cynthia Hawley, and this is Linda Donnelly. Linda is submitting some protests tonight, her own.
Are you doing this for the protest, for the public hearing? We'll wait for that if you want to do it then. This is general public comment. Do you want to wait for the public hearing item? It seems as though that would be appropriate.
Mayor, I've heard a number of comments right at this podium during this time directly on the comments on the agenda item. And this isn't a comment on the agenda item, it's a submission of protests.
Okay, go ahead. We have a couple minutes left on public comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. These protests were collected by the Citizens for Affordable Living before the first rate increase notice was distributed. Most do not have a date. Since they are submitted to you, they must be included in the raw count before they are reviewed for qualifications. The City of Morro Bay has only the powers designated it by the state, as the letter you received from the Howard Jarvis Association mentioned. In this case, state law does not require the date on a protest, and state law preempts the city's requirement for a dated protest and preempts the exclusion of protests for failure to provide a date. Any protest that provides the valid information required by state law must be accepted by the city as valid. Mr. Collins indicated to me today that the city requires the date because how could a person protest a rate increase without knowing what it is? Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people are against all rate increases, no matter what the amount is and no matter what the money would be used for. This is a valid reason for protesting. Obviously, the people who turned in protests before the notice was sent out did not need to know what it was. They didn't care. They were protesting any rate increase, and they have the right to protest any rate increase. And the city can't limit protests to those who have knowledge of the amount of the rate increase. It's not your role or your authority to insist that every ratepayer knows the amount of an increase and dates the protest so the city can validate that they have the information for the protest to be qualified. For both of these reasons, on these grounds, the city must accept and qualify the qualifying protests in these stacks.
Thank you. David Nelson, this is the last for public comment for items not on the agenda.
Good evening, David Nelson. I'm a Morro Bay citizen, and I'm here. Look at all the new faces. You guys did a good job pulling people out, and unfortunately, misinformation won't be noticed till all of you will be gone. But I'm here to say, I've talked to people that know what's going on in this water reclamation. We're too soon on this. I mean, you're promising people it's going to go up in price. It's going to come down in price because there's new technology on the surface. People have been lied to in this town. I'm sorry. I could run them down. I stopped reading this stuff once I decided that this plant was wrong. You're saying it's going to be $69 million. You keep changing the numbers, so it doesn't matter. Our neighbors are doing this thing for so much less. I don't understand why we're not just doing tertiary and dumping it in the ocean until we get this together. What you guys are doing, you said $267 million from the beginning, or $167 million. I lose track. There's been so many numbers and things. It's no wonder nobody knows what's going on. And people that believe that we're going to get clean water out of this are being fooled, because the system that you have designed, it's going to cost $27 million for conveyance. You guys know that? That's because a handful of people said, well, gee, we don't want to see it on Highway 41. That's just ridiculous. I mean, hundreds of people have come through here and said, put it out there. You paid millions of dollars to figure out all those places out there. They went to waste. And now you're going to spend $27 million, almost as much as Cayucos is going to spend for their sewer plant, and throw it on all of us. And I just think that you misguided everybody, and I believe that karma takes care of karma, and you guys will pay for it. Thank you.
Thanks, David. That concludes public comment, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. With that, we'll open up consent. And are there any items to pull for consent?
Mr. Rands did submit a timely public comment request for general public comment. It got caught in the B1.
I realize that. We can. I know we set it for 30 minutes. I'm sorry, Barry. We're just going to stick to that. Sorry about that. So, consent. We'll have an opportunity after the public hearing to speak to item C1, Barry. Anybody for consent? And any? I think there's. As far as the Measure G, I just want to real quick respond from public comment. We do have a resolution actually, that opposes fracking. So as far as Measure G goes and agendizing that, I think we have something on record from the position of the city. Other than that, we can move on to consent. Anybody for a consent item to pull?
Move approval of the consent item.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion approved by Councilmember Heading, second by Councilmember McPherson. Any discussion? None? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, moving on. Okay, we can get on to our first item of business, our public hearing item. And give me a minute to shuffle around. Okay. Item B1 is our public hearing for tonight. This is for the adoption of Resolution Number 7118, establishing new water and sewer wastewater rates and user fees. I'd like to ask now that we present our staff report for this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott Collins, City Manager, and you will hear from the City Attorney as well as our City Clerk. And we'll try to get through this quickly so that we can get any questions answered as well as give plenty of opportunity for the community to voice their opinions on this very important matter. So we're here tonight for the public hearing for the wharf surcharges. Joe's going to talk kind of about the legal stuff. I want to talk about how the process unfolded here in Morro Bay, and then Dana's going to talk about the count that was conducted this afternoon with folks from the community observing that. And then end with potential recommendations and direction depending upon how many protests we may receive this evening. So I will now turn it over to Joe Pannone, our City Attorney, to talk about the legal requirements for Proposition 218.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. As you know, as I'm sure the public knows, Proposition 218 was an amendment to the California Constitution adopted by the California voters in 1996. That proposition has been interpreted by the California Supreme Court to require property owners who are subject to water and water rate increases to be given an opportunity to protest those increases. Morro Bay has also sent that notice of that opportunity to protest to all customers of record for those people who pay your sewer and water bills. The state legislature has also adopted provisions to try to implement Proposition 218. Those combined laws and the court decision require the city to provide a written notice of a scheduled public hearing at which the council would consider imposing rate increases. Written protests must be filed with the city clerk before the end of that public hearing for which that notice was given, and that's the hearing that's being held tonight. To be successful, written protests must be filed by owners or customers of record regarding a majority of parcels that are subject to the increases. A majority means 50% plus one. No matter how many owners or customers of record are related to one parcel, and no matter how many of those may protest the increases, only one of those protests will be counted toward the 50 plus 1. In addition to the above requirements and procedures, and to continue its transparent approach with this 218 process, the city adopted Resolution Number 4418 to establish procedures it would follow during the protest process. That resolution and those procedures were modified based on citizens' comments. Establishing such a procedure prior to the commencement of the Prop 218 process was recommended by the League of California Cities. The 218 process the city has initiated, it has implemented, and it continues to carry out complies with all the legal requirements established by Prop 218, the legislation adopted to implement that proposition, and all applicable case law.
Thank you, Mr. Pannone. So how that translates into our process, the city, after council approved the rates and the public hearing date was set for August 28th, 2018, and direction was provided to staff to include Spanish and English versions in the notice to be sent out to parcel owners and ratepayers. The city provided 6,208 parcel owner and ratepayer addresses to a consultant who worked to get all of that compiled and sent out to all those addresses with the Postal Service. Again, establishing August 28th as the public hearing. We noted a week later that there was an error that more than several, over 1,000 individuals did not in fact get mailed their notice. And so we quickly put a team together to get that out as quickly as possible after noticing the error, and sent out 1,282 additional notices. And by virtue of that occurring and wanting to make sure that they had the 45-day period of time to, look at the information and make their best decision on that information, we changed the hearing to September 11th through administrative action, which was ratified by City Council on August 14th. Beyond the notices, we felt it was very important to provide additional service to our community, understanding how important this decision is as individuals, and understanding the affordability or lack thereof for coastal California. We had held 10 office hours for businesses and residents to ask questions about their specific bill or any lingering questions they may have about the wharf project. We made contact with probably over 50 individuals in the community through those 10 office hours, 3 to 4 hours in length for each one of them. Some hosted at City Hall, some out in the community. We sent numerous mailers during the Prop 218 process itself and prior to ensure that we had as robust outreach to our community so they understood what was coming forward and they understood what to expect as best as possible as we put information together to make sure they made an informed decision. And we also put information on our website, updated that regularly, our social media sites, worked with the local media to make sure that information was getting out in those. And we also hosted several community forums to make sure that our community was well informed and educated on this very important decision. So ultimately, what we're looking at, to recap, was a $41 wharf surcharge, $25 for sewer and $16 for water. These are for single-family homes. It's a bit lower for multifamily homes, and for businesses, it's depending upon water usage, but ultimately it's the same percentage increase when you look at it closely. And those rate increases cover the cost of the wharf at the estimated amount of $126 million. So the public hearing tonight for the wharf surcharge protest process, as Joe talked about at the high level, in order for a protest to be successful, you need 50% plus one of eligible parcels have submitted a protest. In our case, it's 2,794 valid protests. It was a higher number a couple weeks ago, but we did consult with a couple community members about that, and there are some parcels that will never be developable. They're on the sand spit, they're on the coastline, places that it's impossible to foresee a city council ever approving development on those parcels. There was probably about 24 of those, and you divide that by 2 and add +1 for the 50% +1, it gets us to 2,794. So we just want to make sure the community was aware of that. So we need that number of valid protests in order for the protest to be considered successful. If there's less than 2,794 valid protests received, the wharf surcharges can be approved by City Council. And I'll now turn it over to Dana Swanson, our City Clerk, to talk about the protest count process that occurred today.
Thank you, Scott and Mayor and Council. Since the first notices were mailed on July 13th, the City Clerk's office has been collecting all of those submitted both by mail and hand delivered across the counter. Those have been secured in my office since that time in a sealed container. This afternoon, we invited 4 members of the public to observe the opening of that ballot box and the raw count of the protests that had been received, as well as the request for withdrawal. I'm very thankful to the 4 members who spent 4 hours with us observing that rather tedious process, and we're here to report the information gathered.
Thank you, Dana.
So, thank you for that, Dana. So the raw count totaled 2,151 parcels. 2,151 protests, not parcels. None of those have been validated. That was just the raw count. In addition, we did receive 5 requests to withdraw protests, and none of those have been validated either. Just wanted to, anything to clarify, Dana? Okay. So here's several lengthy options for recommendations or pathways for council tonight. First one out is if a total of 2,794 or more non-validated protests are reported by the city clerk tonight, we would recommend continuing the item to a date certain and direct staff to initiate the validation process as outlined by the city clerk on Wednesday, September 12th. Very extensive protocols about how to conduct that and best practices, and talking with colleagues in the field about how to do that in very much in public so that people can observe that process. Staff would bring those results of the validation process back to council that date certain and with recommendations depending upon what comes forward. Or if there's insufficient time tonight to conduct an orderly count, as Dana mentioned, it took about 4 hours to count very methodically 2,151 protests. We want to make sure we are able to do that as well as get to other business. If we're unable to do that tonight, we would recommend, again, directing staff to complete the count, and if there are, after completion of that count, if there's 2,794 or more protests counted in that raw count, that staff would initiate the validation process and bring results of that validation process back to council. If the subsequent total count is less than 2,794, staff would bring back a recommendation to adopt Resolution 7118, improving the water and sewer rates. If there's more that are validated, then you would not be able to proceed forward with approving the water and sewer rates. Or if you count all the protests that have been submitted tonight and there's less than 2,794, we'd recommend council adopt Resolution 7118, approving the water and sewer rates. So try to keep it brief. We're happy to answer any technical questions right now or any other questions you may have.
Okay. At this point, we'll any discussions from council, and then we'll start off. Red, do you have any questions for council at this point?
Yes. Ms. Hawley submitted some votes, and she said they were not dated. I would ask Mr. Pannoni for a legal opinion.
Based on that information that we were given for those that purported ballots that were just submitted, I see the council having two options. One option is because they were described as not meeting the criteria that the City Council has established through Resolution 4418, you could determine tonight that those are invalid. Or you could ask the city clerk to count those number of what was submitted and see if those, plus whatever other ballots you may receive tonight, if those meet the 2794 number, then we'd have to go through that process of validating or invalidating that, and we wouldn't be able to complete the process tonight. I guess a third option is to ask the city clerk to open all those envelopes and see whether there are other reasons that they may be invalid rather than just a date, and then decide not to include them tonight in the count of 2794.
All right, Matt? John?
I'm sorry, Mr. Pannoni, just clarification on that. I think Ms. Holly, when she presented those, said that, and I don't know if I heard this correctly, they were all collected prior to the notice that was sent by the city, and they did not contain dates. Is that what I heard? You heard?
I think I heard that second part too, that they were all collected before the notices went out, but definitely none of them have dates.
And as a result of that, from a legal standpoint, are they legally valid?
Again, they don't meet the criteria that the council established in Resolution 4418 because it said it had to be dated and they had to be submitted after the notices were sent out.
Thank you. Marlos? None? Okay, that concludes questions. At this point, before we move on to the next point, officially I need to declare that the public hearing regarding the consideration of proposed new water and wastewater sewer charges rates is now open. And with that, Madam Clerk, Dana, first, thanks for all your work and the team's work, and just a very long process, and your organization. But officially, have the customers and property owners received notice of the protest hearing?
Yes, the city mailed notice to all property owners of parcels and customers subject to the water and sewer surcharge rates on July 13th, 23rd, and 27th, 2018. Affidavits of mailing for those are on file in the clerk's office.
Okay. And have there been written protest filed with the clerk, and are there enough protest for a majority protest of any of these fees in question?
Prior to commencement of this evening's meeting, the clerk's office received 2,151 written protests, as well as 5 requests to withdraw their protest. None of these protests have been validated. Even if all of them were validated, are insufficient protests with respect to the water and sewer surcharge rates for them pursuant to Prop 218 to count as a majority protest from the persons owning or customers occupying parcels subject to the surcharge.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from council? At this point, as we move on to public comment, I've organized these for public comment in order of what was checked off. And we have public comment speaker slips for 1 minute, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes. And I'm just going to start with the people that selected the 1 minute for public comment. First one up would be Glenn Silloway.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Glenn Silloway. I'm a resident of Morro Bay, and I obviously have to be brief. I support the rate increase. I would like to point out that the projected rate increase for Morro Bay at $191 a month for water plus sewer for a user of 5 units is almost identical to what is being proposed through a 218 process for Cayucas. They're actually a little bit more. Users of less than 5 units in Morro Bay will pay less than those people who live in Cayucas. This project is unlovable in many ways. None of them are perfect, but it is on the table now. We have loans now that will keep it affordable, and we need to pursue this project. I congratulate you. I hope you will continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Glenn. Scott Cahill.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the Council. I'm here to speak in support of the measure. I moved here, my name is Scott Cahill. I moved here in 1985 with my parents. I thank them very much for moving me here. We came from Hawaii, and that was still a good move to get here. But they specifically chose to live here in Morro Bay versus Los Osos because of the fact that Los Osos did not have an active and working sewer at that time. And my dad kind of foresaw what was going to happen. And in watching what happened in Los Osos over the 15 to 20 years it took them to finally figure something out and how much more exorbitant the cost became because of that delay, I don't want to see that happen to our community as well. And I'm speaking on behalf of my mother who's here as well. So there's two citizens who are in support of this measure at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Bacon. And then Aaron Oakes.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, citizens. I'd like to just voice my opinion that based on the facts alone, I wish you to go ahead with your plan. I think the city's got it all together. I want to lend my support to your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Oakes. And then Ahmed Kasim.
Aaron Oakes of Save Morro Bay. I am a Morro Bay resident. So my public comment was actually 3 minutes and not 1 minute. And I just want to let the council know that Mayor Irons violated my First Amendment rights by restricting my public comment. I did have a general public comment slip, and there was still time left on the clock before the 30 minutes expired. So I can have a cure and correct demand, or I can file a lawsuit. It's your choice.
You have 3 minutes for public comment, Aaron. Go ahead.
Good, and add 2 more minutes to my public comment before I prepare my remarks. Will you do that?
You're on the clock. There's no exchange of conversation. Please complete your comments. Thank you.
I'll file a complaint tomorrow. Okay. So on September 3rd, Councilwoman Marlis McPherson distributed flyers in my neighborhood for a political organization called Morro Bay Water Future, but they have a DBA as a Morro Bay committee to support the 2018 WRF rate increase. That's electioneering. And I have neighbors in the Morro Bay Heights area that have witnessed Marlis McPherson and her partner Glenn Silloway disseminating flyers from the organization. A lot of those claims that were in those flyers were factually incorrect. And it troubles me and at least 30 other residents that I spoke to who received flyers and witnessed Ms. McPherson disseminating this information, that the city is colluding with this organization. And I formally request that Marlis McPherson recuse herself from this vote. By recusing herself from this vote, she can stay true to her positions and beliefs. So, over the past 2 months, I've spoken to hundreds of residents who weren't quite sure what this Proposition 218 vote was about. You know, they asked me, do you go to the ballot box in November? What is it? What is it about? You have this $41 a month surcharge tacked onto your bill for capital improvement projects that aren't fully explained. With no cost breakdowns, no duration of payments. Trust us. You'll notice these things if you actually got the notice. Many didn't. The city mailed out a postcard announcing an extension of the hearing, but those who didn't receive a notice in the first place but got the postcard didn't know what the extension was for. If you wanted to get a copy of the notice, good luck. City Hall wouldn't give you a copy. Want to find the notice online? Good luck. The city removed the council-approved digital copy from their website. The city said they did the best they could to notify all ratepayers. But a lot of renters whose names are on the water sewer bill didn't get a notice. Come on now. Public trust has been compromised, and it was compromised with my freedom of speech tonight.
Ahmed Kassim, and then Cynthia Hawley.
Good evening, City Council, and good evening, citizens of Morro
Ahmed,
Bay.
could you speak into the mic, please? Thank you.
Good evening, City Council, and good evening, citizens of Morro Bay. I am here to support the water reclamation facility and thank the City Council for their efforts to build the plant that will make the future of Morro Bay better. However, I would like the City Council to look at the people that could not afford. And we came up with about 900 or 1,000 individuals that could not afford the increase. I hope that the City Council will make every effort possible to, I heard that there is $7 that could come from a grant that has not been reduction in the increase from a grant that was submitted but we didn't get approval. I hope that the City Council will put that $7 for the people that cannot afford it, and therefore it will cut down about $35 for everyone that cannot afford, based on the fact that we have about 5-to-1 ratio for general to the people that cannot afford. The problem for the people that cannot afford are being politicized, and I would like this City Council to take steps to bifurcate the politics from the sewer plant. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Ahmed. Cynthia Hawley.
Cynthia Hawley, I want to first start with something that Aaron said, and that is that the law requires a public hearing like this to be the decision to be made by an impartial body, an unbiased, impartial body. And in relation to Councilwoman McPherson, I agree that she should recuse herself because she has definitely shown that she is not an impartial or unbiased decision maker, and the public has the right to have their decisions made by impartial and unbiased representatives. The next thing is that I just want to stress that the city does have the power and the authority to establish procedure, and I believe that's one of the words that was used tonight already for the resolution that you and the rules that you have made. You have the right to establish procedure, but you do not have the right when the state constitution sets criteria for the qualification of these protests. You do not have the right to add a criteria to the state constitution that will limit and exclude protests that are submitted that do have the qualities and the qualifications that are required by the state constitution. You simply do not have that authority. Your authority comes from the state, and you are preempted by that. Another thing is that as to these protests that were turned in today by Linda Donnelly, there's nearly 1,000 of them. So, and these have been gone over, and they all contain the state required qualifications. The criteria are in there. Following your own rules, the first thing that has to happen is the raw count. You can't just say tonight, well, let's not look at those. They've been submitted. They have to go through the raw count. What the question is, if you are going to violate the California Constitution and exclude protests that the California Constitution says are valid, that's your question to make. But first they have to go through the raw count. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Brinkman.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and staff. My name is Carolyn Brinkman, and I'm a resident of Morro Bay. A few days ago, I went to the city's website to find some information related to the scheduled Proposition 218 rate protest. I could not find anything. Not in the website's opening page, not under Hot Topics, not in the menu on the left side of the page, and not anywhere on the Water Reclamation Facility website, even under Frequently Asked Questions. You've probably heard me a number of times come before the City Council to talk about processes of governance and how they are very important, and they say something about a governing body. Last week I emailed someone at the city to ask if information on the 218 protest was available on the website. I didn't receive a response, which is unusual, actually. Then I began to wonder how residents of Morro Bay and property owners living elsewhere would get information if, say, they missed the mailed notice on the 218 or had need for additional information not on the notice. Busy people who can't come to City Hall to ask questions would most likely go to the city's website for information. They would have been out of luck. At a minimum, basic information on the 218 protest should have been available under Hot Topics on the city's website, and links to the two important documents should have been provided. The notice on the 218 mailed out to the ratepayers and parcel owners should certainly have been on the website in case someone didn't get it, didn't have time to come down and get one. Resolution 4418, containing detailed information on the 218 protest, should also have been on the website. The only way a person could get that document was to know during which meeting the resolution was passed, or that the document even existed. People might need to know who exactly could vote, how votes should be submitted, what would count, what would not. This is not a matter of the law, obviously, since Proposition 218 is somewhat vague. It's a matter of the city making sure ratepayers and owners of property have all the information they need to make their voices heard. That's called facilitating democracy. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. David Nelson. Please no clapping. If we could just wave and support, that would be great as we can move on and respect the next person who's speaking for public comment. Come on up, David. And then following that is Dan Sedley.
Hi, David Nelson again, Morro Bay citizen. I'd like to correct Mr. Salway, who compares our rates to Cayucos. He obviously, they pay every other month in Cayucos. That's what was in the newspaper. I haven't talked to anybody, but that's what I understand from our fine news media here. And, you know, again, you're spending money like crazy. And this system just isn't going to be right. I mean, we called for other bids from other people, but you people started right from the beginning with a company that, by coincidence, I'm sure, is going to build this place. It wasn't right. It's old technology. You took the PERC plant and took its membrane and put it on this. I talked to a professor up at Stanford who's cutting edge water, and the one thing he said was, why are you going to use this membrane? It's built for a small footprint plant. This isn't a small footprint plant. He named a couple other new systems that are really up to date and cutting edge, but he was baffled by that. He was proud of our city for going for this, and I've been pushing for toilet to tap for a long time, but this isn't the one. And when you look at the details, what he said in his email to me was, the devil is in the details. And if you read the manager's report, the devil's in there. I mean, we have cost overruns that they can go up to 30%. We have managers' fees that are 3% and 5%. We're being told that we're getting a low interest loan. I have a home equity loan that's 3%. You're getting a 3.5%. Is that low? They're making us move our plant. We should be getting subsidized by both the federal and the state at the 1% rate for the revolving fund, because they're making us move our plant. We could put a plant there, and for the price that this is costing us, we should qualify for this. But nobody's going there. We're taking the first loan that comes from EPA, and that's just ridiculous. We're being forced to move, and like I say, the conveyance. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but in the manager's report, they said that the conveyance cost of this is like $27 million. I mean, that means that we are going to pay $27 million to move our sewer from where it is down there, just to move this sewage and then bring back the water. That's expensive. That's absurd. And like I said, this has been a big waste of money, and we're going to be back here in 5 years because we're going to need more money to pay for this, because it's just overbuilt. We haven't fixed one sewer line. Start fixing the damn sewer lines. We have infiltration going in.
Dan Sedley.
Next. Thank you for all your help.
Dan Sedley and then Richard Sadowski.
My name is Dan Sedley. I'm a citizen of Morro Bay. I want to say at the beginning that I support clean water and affordable rates for city ratepayers and homeowners. The current reclamation facility being proposed here does not provide affordable rates. I have spoken to too many homeowners, too many renters that are telling me that they have to move from Morro Bay because since 2015, their rates have already been doubled, and now they're looking at a possible movement towards tripling of their rates, and this is just unaffordable by them. They do not have the means to earn sufficient more retirement, sufficient more paycheck, sufficiently more Social Security. I believe that Proposition 218 has been violated in several ways. Hundreds of ratepayers that pay water and sewer rates have advised me that they have not received city notice, whereas city homeowners have overwhelmingly advised me that they have received these notices. That tells me that ratepayers, the listing was not complete. I have talked to both homeowners and ratepayers, as I said, in the hundreds that I've spoken to have not received notices, and in that regard, I'm saying Proposition 218 has been violated. I'm also saying that Proposition 218 is violated in the requiring of dates. The law does not require those dates. The city has made up this requirement. I'm stating for the record that that's in violation of Proposition 218 law. Thirdly, signature authentication of the signatures on the ballots, requiring that they authentify that the above information is correct, and that's another made-up part of the city ballot that's been made up that's not required by Proposition 218 law. In that regard, I have submitted a Freedom of Information request pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, which is federal law requiring that my questions should be responded to by the city. It's not a request. The federal law requires that. And I am asking these questions about how Proposition 218 can be violated by the city, because I believe that it has been. In regard to the Reclamation Act, I have read the engineering reports, and they largely say that reclamation may work, which means that it may not work. To spend $126.5 million on something that might work, we cannot afford that. Again, it's not affordable. Morro Bay deserves clean water, affordable water, and an affordable plan. I'm looking forward to leadership from a city council that can give us an affordable sewer plant.
Thanks, Dan. Richard Sadowski. Marla Jo Sadowski. Joan Solo. Oh, okay, Marla Jo's here. All right.
Good evening, Marla Jo Sadowski again. I'd like to follow up on Ms. Brinkman's comment about the availability of the ballots and the 218 information. It came to my attention that the city of Morro Bay had a strict policy to refuse requests at the front desk at City Hall. If someone were to walk into City Hall and request a ballot, they were refused and went away empty-handed. If they pursued and asked, what do I do if you won't give me one? They were told they could write down the information on a piece of paper and hand it in, which is by law correct. However, the information that the city wants on the ballot wasn't available at the front desk. So in essence, there were people who did take the time to run by City Hall because they knew they were supposed to have received something in the mail that they didn't, and they were refused, and it was by administrative policy. I find this inexcusable, and I do believe that this 218 process has been violated in numerous ways. As far as the plant goes, someone mentioned that I'll just say this. When I bought here, I had looked at Los Osos, and I made the same decision as somebody else here. I knew that they would have to have sewer, and it would be a mess. So I didn't buy there. All right. When I came to Morro Bay, I checked on the water availability. The city of Morro Bay had 2 sustainable drinking water aquifers They had a sewer plant and a collection system. To come to this point where we do not have the Toro we can't pump from, and it did have nitrate problems, I don't know now, but our Morrow Valley drinking water aquifer is completely unusable unless it goes through desal. And there are those of us who are convinced that there is raw sewage going into that aquifer on the daily for the last 12 years. The city said that they would fix those pipes. In 2008, they gave us a notice in the mail that they were going to start fixing the pipes on Main Street and Morro Bay Boulevard. It's 2018. In 2015, the people of this city voted in that last 218 for money to fix those pipes. Not one pipe fixed.
Thank you. Joan Solu. And then Terry Simons.
Good evening, council, staff, and community. Thank you for taking my comment. My name is Joan Solu of Morro Bay. Our community has had an internal struggle since 2008. Few topics have been more controversial than the wastewater treatment plant and our sewer and water services, rates, and product. Tonight, that may end. The issue is again coming to a head with the public hearing and this 218 vote. No matter the count, I want to urge you to uphold the residents' wishes. Yes or no, it is not your decision, it is the decision of the ratepayers. Yes or no, it is the ratepayer that will determine if this is the project for our community's future or if we again return to the starting block. Please, for the elected officials listening and the candidates who are running for office listening, please maintain the will of the people. Whatever the outcome, do not circumvent the system like it was done in 2012 with a small majority council asking for the Coastal Commission for the denial of our project. That one error cost this community dearly, not just $70 million additional dollars for a new project. No, the toll was much deeper because of the human division it caused throughout our town. There were neighborhoods defending their property values, neighbors pitted against neighbors, and even deep division in the issue amongst family members in a single house. Let's move on, whatever the vote. If this should pass, you must put in measures to hold the staff, consultants, and construction companies fiscally responsible. I would like to see you create an advisory committee which would have oversight for the finances of any project. Among their responsibilities, this group would review every bill prior to it being paid and make sure that the project was running on time and within budget, making recommendations to you should it run astray. Throughout the life of the project, your advisory committee could continue to review ways to reduce the overall cost of the project, thus reducing the direct cost to the ratepayer. They could do this by working with the city's professional finance director and the excellent city manager. If approved, you must have 100% transparency, and you must have 100% accountability. For a project of this scope, anything less will be unacceptable for our small community. Anything less, and it will be difficult for the community to regain the tranquility of our scenic and peaceful fishing village. You must have accountability. Thank you, and have a good meeting.
Thanks, Joan. Terry Simons.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Terry Simons. I'm a 52-year resident of the County of San Luis Obispo and a relatively recent resident of Morro Bay, about 15 years on my boat and now in a house, paying a water bill and a sewer bill. I'd like to start saying this is a night of surprises. I was quite surprised that my last time here I asked for how many votes it was going to take to protest, and then found out tonight it was actually going to be less. I hope that as the funds are spent, that you're probably going to get with your rate increase, that the same downward trend will continue. I hope so. But more importantly, I was surprised by the large bundle of what may or may not be valid protests turned in a timely way. I would encourage the council to err on the side of caution and to process those as if they were intended to be proper protests, because I think you're opening yourself up to a lawsuit if you don't. I won't be suing you, by the way. And then lastly, I'd like to personally apologize to all the members of CAL, and more importantly, I'd like to personally apologize to all the citizens who support this project, because I feel very responsible for the fact that a hideous project has been brought forward at the South Bay site. And I'll tell you a little story about that. After the defeat of the Rigetti site, I stood in the back of the room with then City Manager David Buckingham. And I said, "So David, now what?" And he said, "I just don't know where to go." I said, "Well, you could always go talk to Tri-W. I think they would love to see a sewer site built on their property, and they would probably even pay for it if you did." It was a joke. I'm so sorry. It was a joke. I will forever be apologizing to this community if that plant is built on the South Bay site. It is an engineering nightmare. If you're not listening to your engineers, then they're not telling you what they should be telling you. It's a horrible elevation to try to move sewage to. You're creating the potential for a lift station that can be an engineering and environmental nightmare, not to mention a huge carbon footprint to generate the energy necessary to push the raw sewage up that hill. I apologize to you all. Thank you.
Barbara Spagnola.
Good evening, council, staff, and citizens. My name is Barbara Spagnola, resident of Morro Bay. I'm also a representative or chair of the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee on the WRF-CAC committee, and was also recently asked to participate on the Blue Ribbon. However, I am not speaking on or behalf of any of those groups. I'm speaking as an individual citizen for clarity. And basically, I'm here to support the project and convey to you that I believe what I've worked with on the staff, the external consultants, and as well as all the citizens on the boards and other citizens, that we have actually studied these issues for several years, made recommendations, challenged assumptions, and I believe we have a good solution now from a financial perspective, and that I also think there have been some mistakes made along the way by all of us, but regardless, at this point, we are at a juncture where we need, assuming the vote is positive, we need to move forward. And I will also tell you that I know as citizens and as citizens serving on boards, all of us will do everything we can to continue to challenge and review every single cost line item, and also to look at maybe some strategic programs we can put in to help those that may not be able to afford to pay this increased rate, and bring that rate down based on the financing, et cetera. The other thing I want to mention is that the public outreach, I believe, has been extensive, and my concern is the labor horsepower from the city that's been at many of these things, including some of our meetings, for which I have observed very little attendance by the citizens. I've also commented very limited on social media about the OpenGov solution, the financial solution to provide more transparency. I've asked people to come to our meeting, our CFAC meeting that was demonstrated in the July meeting, as well as the August meeting. At the August meeting, we had almost 0 attendees. One person there for 15 minutes taking pictures of on a smartphone of those up on the dais. Not sure what that was about. Maybe we're being targeted for a Halloween prank. But regardless, we still want to work on this OpenGov solution, and we will do our best to try to make those reports available, and would encourage all citizens to participate. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Joe Wallach.
Greetings, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Joe Wallach, local resident of Morro Bay. My concern is tonight on a fair and free election, and I'm concerned about the validity of this whole process with 218, of course, just like the rest of you. And, in a democracy, which I'm used to and most of you are, when we have an election or a vote on something, it's one person, one vote, majority rules. You tally them up and you see. In this case, this is a negative protest, so half of the population has to take action to have their voice heard. Well, the other people do nothing, and it's automatic. And I can't believe that the other half are all in favor of the project. I'm not here to say one side or the other, whether I'm for or against it. I'm here to see that the democratic process is not completely circumvented. It seems that we really need to have an election that's fair, open, honest, and we tally the votes by an impartial person. And only votes that are actually cast should be counted in America. We don't want a system where absentee people that don't vote, non-voters, are counted as a yes or a no. So I'm very concerned about the democratic process being circumvented in this democracy. And I can't stress it enough. Only both sides should vote on the merits of their particular position, whether it's for or against, and then you have a free election. And this is far from that. This is a travesty. I can't believe this is happening in Morro Bay. This is just absolutely ridiculous. So I hope you can sort this out somehow, and we can move forward and work together again as a community, because this is a very sad day. Thank you.
Thank you. Homer Alexander.
My name is Homer Alexander. I've been following this project for a number of years. My concern has always been the cost. I thought the decision on January 3rd, 2013, to notify the board of the Coastal Commission to deny the Atascadero Road project was a mistake. Until early this year, I felt that the project was mismanaged. However, that is history and cannot be changed. The five of you must have agreed, since you fired the two individuals that were responsible for providing this bad advice. In May, I was appointed to a small committee by Mr. Collins to review all the expenses and make up the water and sewer funds and the rates necessary to generate the revenue to support those expenses. Our group met 8 times. Each meeting lasted several hours. We spent the majority of those meetings arguing with the staff, the new project engineer, and the rate consultants on how to reduce costs. For reasons I'm about to explain, any project other than the current one will cost the ratepayer significantly more. Anyone with experience in large construction projects or who has acquired a decent-sized business knows that the financing is as important, if not more important, than the price. The annual debt service payments drive the monthly rates, not the project costs. The key to the proposed financing is the low interest loan from a new EPA program, a program that may or may not be available in future years. The EPA loan will improve the city's chances of securing a low interest loan from the State Water Fund. Currently, Municipal bonds represent a $25 million piece of the $95 million that will be borrowed. Replacing the municipal bonds with a state low-interest loan will reduce the proposed rates an additional 17%. If the current Proposition 218 protest is successful, or if a new City Council majority is elected in November and the project is stopped, the city will most likely lose these low-interest public agency loans. Any further delay of the WRF project, regardless of where the future plan is located, will likely force the city to finance the entire project with municipal bonds. Since municipal bond rates are much higher, the monthly cost to the ratepayer will be significantly more than what is currently proposed. Thank you.
Thanks, Homer. I didn't quite understand Mr. Oak's comments earlier, but I just found his second speaker slip card. So I think there were two speaker slip cards, so I think he's asking to speak again. I don't see Aaron here, so I'll put it aside, and the next one up is Meredith Bates. Welcome, Meredith.
Good evening, Council. My name is Meredith Bates. I live in Morro Bay. And I first want to thank Dana and Lori for all their hard work. I know it's been a busy time with the election and the ballot counting, so thank you very much. I really appreciated the proclamation and Ruth Angus' presentation this evening in her talk. It's kind of ironic that she spoke about nonviolence, including equality for all, even including low-income folks, and also to end the divisiveness in communities, not to have an us versus them kind of a program. And it seems like that's right where we are with the WRF project. There's divisiveness in our community. There doesn't seem to be a good solution for people with low income. I also really appreciated Joan Sulu's comments, and I want to talk, as soon as I find it on my phone, a little about some other items that I think need to be included in a plan for the WRF, regardless of whether it's the current plan or a different plan. I'm disappointed that there's no component for economic justice, environmental justice in the current plan. I think it's really important. It's in the Government Code section 65302. It's important for that piece to be included because it talks about equality for races, income, and I think it would be very important to that to be in our plan. I also would like to see some component about local hiring. I think it would benefit the community. It would be good economic prosperity for our city or county. Even the city of San Luis Obispo has a component in their sewer plan for local hiring. They've worked with several of the unions, so they will be able to bring that economic development to San Luis Obispo, and I think we need to do the same. I also think we need to have a component in our plan for local procurement. We need to buy as many goods and services as we possibly can from the city or the county. Again, this would benefit local businesses. This would help us retain money in our own community. And we can't just talk about this. It needs to be written into the plan. There needs to be a method to find out if this is really happening, some kind of enforcement for this policy, and a way for transparency so we can really see that this is happening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Meredith. Linda Fidel. Linda Donnelly.
Good evening. Linda Donnelly, Morro Bay. Proposition 218, which is California law, does not require a person date their protest. You, the city, has usurped the California law by making the Right to Vote on Taxes Act restrictive. You also said many times we would be going out to a Prop 218 vote approximately April or May. Nothing in the law precludes a group like Cal from being proactive and collecting votes. Therein, I believe that's the rub that the city found on what we were doing, and that we were already notifying people to get ready because this was coming down the pike. We had numbers at the time, 167 million, 150. Oh, now we're down to 126, which we know that's not going to happen. So my belief are that you tried to find a way to disqualify the votes that I submitted tonight. And by the way, my legal protest is in amongst those that are submitted in those stacks. Even the county will give you a ballot if you don't have one on any general or June election. To turn people away at City Hall, to not be able to print out a ballot, that was just wrong. Another concern is the 7.5 days the city held to answer your questions. I call it electioneering. How much did these high-paid officials sitting around at this table who were directed to be there to answer people's questions during a 4-hour period for 7 days, 7 different days, 4 hours. And then the last 3 of those, you moved them to the parks. So I asked my husband to find out why. Why don't we move them from City Hall to the park? And he was told to try to catch the dog walkers. To try to catch people, that's electioneering. To try to catch them to do what? Let them know that this is going on? You went out of your way to the park as a city, which as the people who are actually holding a 218, it's electioneering. All your job as council members are to do is to call for the 218, let the process happen, and then meet here tonight or that specific date and let the city clerk do her job and count the ballots. I'm asking you to count the 1,000 that we have turned in tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Stevens, Morro Bay resident. I think an apology is in order. I believe that I know how passionate people get here, and I'm appreciative that that's part of the process. I think an apology is in order to Cynthia Hawley. I don't think that was really appropriate. I'm very, very proud of how everybody in this city has made their best effort to, in their own way, contribute. I think, some a little more than others might have crossed the line in terms of what is ethical and moral. But I know that everybody, in their own way, is rationalizing this and feels comfortable enough in their own skin that, well, that's the way that the process works. Unfortunately, Prop 218 is written in a very loose and ambiguous way, but there are guidelines, and those guidelines are in law, and specifically there is nothing in there that allows the city to have an additional date requirement, just as I know there was some discussion early on in terms of a resolution, should we include some kind of perjury inclusion in there, which is interesting because it gets me to the WIFIA loan. And now when you're talking about loan applications, any legal statements that are made in there are signed under penalty of perjury. Now, this pertains to residential loans. I can't tell you for sure. You know for yourself. So the question that exists is, do we have within our WIFIA loan package that we own the property? Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. That concludes our public comment speaker slips. And with that, we'll close public comment. Bring it back to council. I think there are a couple questions there as far as refusing requests from the front counter, and I just want to clarify that statement there. Scott, if you can do that.
That's incorrect. If somebody came in, they didn't have a ballot, the staff was very clear what is required to be placed in to have submitted a protest.
If we can keep the audience, the comments down, please.
So
you're out of order.
Okay.
Public comment's closed, Marla.
That's a lie.
Public comment is closed.
Perjury.
Thank you.
You're lying, Mayor. So I'll try again. Staff was told to provide information about what's required for a valid protest. They're given specific instructions to provide that if folks came to the counter, if they didn't have a ballot or they had questions. And if they had further questions, Dana, myself, Jen Calloway, Finance Director, were available. We also had people call and say, you know, I've heard about this Prop 218. I didn't get the notice. I'm concerned that, you know, I don't know what's going on. And almost all those cases, when they did confer with staff, they were actually mailed the notice. It was mailed to a different address than where they currently reside, but it's in the county assessor's rolls. So it was actually mailed to where their current, you know, tax bill goes. So in all the cases where folks were looking for that, we were able to track it down. Now, when people say, well, 200 people told me they didn't get it, well, those 200 people didn't contact us, so we have no way of verifying whether that's true or not. But the people who did come in say they don't have it, they don't know where it went, they were provided very specific information about what's required to submit a protest. And yes, a piece of paper could be provided for them to do that, and it did occur in instances.
Okay. So, so we'll go for some questions here and allow staff to answer as far as taking comments from the crowd, if you would please, the audience, excuse me. So I think it's helpful. I know the Prop 218 process. Joe, you did some explanations at the very beginning of the process, but we still continue to hear some comments about Prop 218 and not being able to cast a vote. And the California Constitution that enacted Prop 218 is not necessarily a yes-no ballot, but it's a protest. And this was established through the vote of the people from the state of California. Can you just explain that a little bit more, please? Thanks.
Yep. Prop 218 had two parts to it. There was one part that dealt with how to allow assessment districts to go forward. In Morro Bay, things like the Cloisters Assessment District is one of those kinds of districts. If it had been created after Prop 218 had been created. The issue there is for assessment districts, there actually has to be a positive vote to allow an assessment district to go forward. The part of Prop 218 that applies to sewer and water facilities is not that kind of a process. The process that the Constitution sets up, that the voters approved, was for there to be a protest vote, and unless there's a protest of 50% plus one, the city council, any city council, any board of supervisors, has the authority to impose the fees that were being suggested.
Okay, thanks for that. Were there any other points in here, council, that you picked up that you might have taken notes on, or staff that you want to take notes on that we needed to respond to?
Yes, I believe that a charge was made against me that possibly actually just putting a piece of information on people's doorstep constituted an illegal or possibly unethical act. and that there was collusion with the city, and therefore I should recuse myself from voting. Mr. Pannoni, could you explain the legal requirements and if there was any kind of a violation on the city's part or my part?
Certainly, I will do that. When a council member is elected, the council member doesn't give up their First Amendment rights just by being elected. What was described as what you had done was exercising those rights, and you were exercising those rights on your own time and at no city cost. Notwithstanding that, I suppose someone could claim that, and apparently people feel that somehow you can't be open-minded when you're deciding the next decisions in this tree of decisions that you're going to be making. Well, actually, in August of 14th, the decision was made to go forward with the WRF project. As a result of that, the Prop 218 process was put in play, and now it's really a decision for the customers and the property owners to be making. It's really no longer a decision for you to make in the sense of if there's a 50% plus one, then there's no rates that can be raised. If there isn't, then I suppose you could decide to not impose those rates, but from my perspective that seems nonsensical since you already decided to have the project go forward. So you'd be sort of saying something as a group that was different than what you said before. So I don't see any legal or ethical requirement for you to have to recuse yourself, or if you do vote, for that somehow to taint the decision of the City Council.
Ms. Brinkman made a couple of comments about information not being available on the website, no 218 info anywhere. Emailed somebody from the city, received no response. Notices not available on the website. Solutions not visible on the website. Maybe staff could comment just about that and the availability of information on our website.
Yes, so just did a quick Google search, and we found a couple of links that actually had that very information were broken. So that is something we just discovered today, unfortunately. So we're looking at as to why that occurred. But if you do search Morro Bay Proposition 218, there are pieces of the information on the website right now. But the ones that were very specific to that, those were broken, and we're trying to identify why that occurred and when. But as it's notified, as the individual noted, I mean, we satisfied the legal requirements for the notices, and further went above and beyond to provide office hours to folks to be available to answer questions. Certainly don't see that as electioneering. I think that's our responsibility as staff to this council and to the community to be able to answer questions that people have. In all those instances, we didn't tell people how they should vote or why they should vote a certain way. We simply provided information and explained to them what their rates would be. And if they asked further questions, we would answer those. So I apologize for that unknown reason why those links were broken. We wanted to make sure that all the information was available. It's not required by law, certainly, and it's also not required that our notices included a sample ballot for folks to use. That definitely goes well above and beyond what most communities do. They simply provide the information that's necessitated to be submitted. We felt it was important that, as well as to be in English and Spanish. Thanks.
Mr. Stevens as well brought up a point about the WIFIA package, the submission containing a statement that the land was purchased, and I know the answer to the question, but maybe we can air that, because I think to be transparent we should. And also my question would be, does that compromise in any way the package that was submitted?
Yes, that statement was made in error. The consultant preparing the document, I believe, confused the MOU with the purchase agreement, and it wasn't caught in the rush to get the information in. I did have a exchange of voicemails and emails with our program manager at WIFIA. He said they're moving full speed ahead on our application and take my email and voicemails as corrections to the application, and no further action is required for them to process the application.
Thank you. And this may be a small point, but I think it's an important point, being transparent. I believe Ms. Donnelly made a comment about having some meetings at the dog park to go after, or at the park to go after people that walk their dogs. Maybe you could explain, Mr. Collins, exactly why we might have reached out to the community at our city parks.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's, again, important that some people don't feel comfortable maybe coming to City Hall. Maybe they felt an environment outside in maybe a neutral area would be more conducive to discussions in a Q&A format. And so we were just trying to experiment. I think that's okay. There's no perfect way to do community outreach. We did get some folks that came into City Hall, but we had, I say, better success in talking with people out in the community. And I think there's no issue with that.
As far as, were there any things that were brought up as far as things from public comment that we may have missed?
There was also a comment that the Cayucas rates were paid every other month, and I think, Red, I believe you checked on that, and you might want to make a comment that those rates are actually comparable to ours, that in fact they pay rates every month. It's Cambria that pays every other month.
Yes, this is the notice of public hearing proposed rate increase for water service dated August 7th, 2018 for CSA 10, which is Cayucas. The new monthly rate effective fiscal year 2020, $93.80 per month for water, and the Cayucas Sanitary District notice of public hearing dated April 20th, 2017 sets the proposed sewer rate increase effective 2021 at $98 per month.
Could you do the math and add that?
191.8.
Okay, in response to any of did you have one for Matt?
Yes, Scott and Joe, I guess this question will go towards you, and either one can answer. A number of our speakers talked about not getting ballots and then having some sort of blockade or thought of a blockade to not get ballots. So what was the process to get a ballot if they didn't get it, Scott? And then Joe, what is the legal requirements to get that ballot if they didn't get it in the mail or skipped it in the mail?
So if they contacted us saying I didn't get a ballot, I want to understand why. We went to the level of looking into the actual database that had all the addresses, and we're able to determine in every case that it was in fact mailed to a location, and mostly it was they had forgotten that was where their tax bill was sent. With regard to providing information at the front desk, it was clear for me as well as the finance director that folks will be providing the information that's necessary to submit a ballot protest. And folks did fill out pieces of paper, complete the requirements, and submit it. And then we date stamp it and put it into the ballot box that Dana had locked and secured in her office.
So then, in fact, there was an alternative. If they did not get a ballot in the mail, they could come to front desk and then submit that and then have it included in the ballot.
Right.
Thank you.
I also think it's important to remember that neither Prop 218, no court decision, nor the state legislative implementation of Prop 218 requires the city to provide a ballot. The city went out of its way to provide a ballot. The city didn't need to do that. They could have just had the information in the notice of what needed to be required, they didn't even, actually wouldn't even need to put that in the notice. The city could have just adopted the policy and said to the public, make sure you read that resolution because that's where the information is. The city went way beyond that by first providing a ballot. Then if someone said they didn't get a ballot or they lost their ballot, the city explained, this is what you have to put. And as the city manager said, that was done.
So with that in mind, Joe, a number of speakers talked about or mentioned the time frame of the vote and ballots being accepted or not. And can you explain again your concept on time frame?
As some speakers said, and the council may have even indicated, Prop 218 itself is ambiguous, which is not unusual when something happens through an initiative. There's a lot of ambiguity. The state legislature tried to assist local governments with the implementation of the Ombudsman 218 process. Even that recognizes in the document itself, the legislation itself, that this isn't the be-all and end-all, but here's some approaches that you may want to take. Here's some ways you can do things. But it's up to the city to decide how best to make sure that they do what they think needs to be done to make sure there's a reasonable opportunity for people to exercise their protest opportunity. The city went out of its way to adopt a resolution indicating what was going to be required for the process. As I said before, the city provided a ballot. The city wants to make sure that the information that people rely on before they make their vote and cast their protest, if that's what they want to do, that they have information that's accurate. One of the reasons that the council decided to include the date was because the council was made aware by citizens that they were being contacted. I'm trying to maintain myself, sorry. They were contacted by Cal representatives and told that unless they protest and sign this form that Cal's giving them, their rates were going to go up between $300 and $600 a month. It was because of that. It was because of that. It was because of that information that the council had that when your staff designed and proposed a process, that we took that into consideration, which again is what the Prop 218 legislation allows because every situation is different. So there's no question in my mind that you had the legal authority to require a date, and you have the legal authority.
Please be quiet in the audience and let him speak.
And based on the information we were given tonight, specifically telling us that things that were submitted tonight don't meet the minimum requirements, if you want to, you have the legal authority to ignore those things that were delivered tonight and not include them in the rough count. You also have the authority to not do that. If you take that approach, someone said they may sue, there's that risk. You have that risk. The alternative to that risk is to set up the process now that has been identified to go review everything, and that's going to take time. Those 1,000, I don't know for sure, but my guess is a lot of those 1,000 are probably duplicates of what you already have in that 2151. So they're not going to count anyway. So taking that approach doesn't seem to be gaining much, except you're losing time. And remember, time is money, and every day and week you don't keep this process moving, costs are going up.
Mayor, can I just interject
please,
real
thanks.
quick? So you did close public comment, but you didn't state you're closing the public hearing, so you would need to do that. So and once you do that, then we cannot receive any more protests.
Yeah, and I think at this point, Joe, thanks for your comments on that. There's also in the announcement of public comment, opening up public comment is announcing that, if anyone is present who wishes to address the council on this matter and who wishes to file a written protest may do so at this time. So if there's anybody in the audience that wants to file a written protest with us, may do so at this time. That hasn't already submitted one. If you've already submitted a written protest.
This is it. Yeah, this is it.
So if you're here to file a written protest, you may do so at this time, unless you've already filed that. Is there anybody who would wish to file a written protest on this Prop 218?
Can I ask a question?
Is there anybody present at the meeting who would like to file a written protest on a Prop 218 protest on the rate increase who hasn't done so already? You may do so right now.
Am I allowed to ask a question about that?
It's not open to questions. I'd be certainly willing to take a recess and you can consult, but it's not necessarily an exchange. I'm just announcing that if you haven't filed a protest and you'd like to do so at this time, you may do so. If you've already filed one, then it's we've already received it. And I don't hear or see anybody from the audience that's present right now that is raising their hand that's saying that I would like to file a written protest.
What does that entail?
It's a very simple question. Would you like to file a written protest? You can come forward and file a written protest at this time. And if you'd like assistance with that, we can help. Steve, if you...
you were just asking a question.
If you'd like...
So do I also have an opportunity to rescind my vote too? Is that part of that?
You do have an opportunity to rescind.
So in reference to the attorney here, Mr. Pannoni, who said about this fictitious $300 to $50 to $600 argument, those same people during that 60 or 45-day period could have rescinded their vote.
Steve, just very simple. Thank you. Okay, with that, the public comment is closed. And at this time, I'll formally announce that our public hearing is closed. Okay. At this point, is there a request for a recess? We can take a short recess, and then we can come back and deliberate. Thanks.